great to see everybody here. It's nice to be able to get to see old friends and colleagues again.
And our residents as well. You know, what we have.
30 stories worth of fire hose seems like a lot, doesn't it?
Anybody wants to talk to Tom or I about what that looks like?
Looking at penetrations, looking at the fire stopping elements we're putting in buildings.
That's another sort of energy sustainable technology that sort of is great but works against us. It also burns the grass in my yard.
Afternoon, ladies and gents. So, who am I? You've seen probably, hopefully, in above. I've been a serving police officer for 30 years, and what I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to change everything I was originally going to say, having heard everything that everyone said this morning. I've sat where you are, and I've been the first responder, so I've been that first person on the ground to a crisis. I think the first major incident or disaster I went to as a young officer in London was the Soho Now bombings, when David Copeland attacked the Admiral Duncan pub in London. I was one of the first officers at that scene, all the way through to what I now do, which is probably the weirdest field you've ever been in, and that is that I train commanders from around the world, including the United Nations just earlier this week, in crisis management, particularly around terrorist attacks using chemical and biological warfare agents. So quite a vast experience, but what I've sat and listened to today is the fact that you are here suggests to me that you and or your company is already aware of most of this. In fact, half of the audience that I think this morning's panels were targeting, and particularly that poor grieving mother of a lost son, are those who are not sat here. So what I'm going to try and do today, and it was nice, I think it was Russ that mentioned that we're going to segue now into how can you make your organisation, how can you make you a better person, okay? And let's talk about that from a crisis management perspective. You've heard about uncertainty, the unpredictability of the world that we live in. I would say in the past 5 years, if not 10 years, I have never seen such an uncertain landscape out there. You've heard time and time again this morning, terrorism, terrorism, terrorism. We've lived through, all of us have lived through, and as businesses have survived through, 2 years of a global pandemic with some of the weirdest circumstances I think any of us would have ever dreamed would have potentially happened. And what that has led to is everyone starting to rethink the way that we do business. So you've heard a word today that I'm going to try and refrain from. I don't like the word plan. Okay, I don't like that as a word. And why I say that is because, in fact, unrehearsed and unplanned, your last three guest speakers said one magic word that I loved, music to my ears. Your business needs a system, a framework. Because the world out there is so uncertain with so many problems, it's way beyond terrorism. It's way beyond terrorism. And what we need to do is develop security and the way we respond to uncertainty and threats as daily business. And if you get good at that, your business itself will become more resilient and better. And you've heard the importance of resilience. So I often ask this, when I go in and consult with a business and they say, what do we need, Dave? I'll say, well, I'll talk about the usual. I've been swimming in this well for sort of like over a couple of decades now, so I can talk about terrorism from knife attacks to sort of like cyber weapons and all sorts of things. And we heard about likelihood, didn't we? Well, how likely is that? I only run a business that earns 20 quid a week. How can I prepare against cyber attack from the Iranians? Well, the simple fact is you need proportionality and reasonability. Okay, so if I engage with your business or someone who knows this industry engages with you, and I think it was either, I do believe it was Nick who mentioned earlier, as a company lead, as a security specialist, go out there and do your homework before you engage with a company. Find out someone or some business that knows what they're talking about, who can deliver what your business needs. Make it bespoke. There's loads of stuff out there that won't be suitable for your business, so proportionality is a key. So we talked about terrorism. What about that? Could that affect your business? What's your thoughts on that? International crisis. What's one going on at the moment? Because we're all suffering from it. I know my purse is every time I go to Lidl's or the supermarket. Cost of living. So we've got a pseudo war going on with Russia at the moment, okay? And it's affecting all of us, okay? So our businesses within the United Kingdom are not immune to global economics and global politics. Cyber hacking. Every small business now, right up to government, industry and businesses, has to have some degree, some proportional degree of responsibility around security threat from cyber hacking. Natural disasters. We are fortunate enough we don't encounter every other cyclone, but I think my favourite one in all the years that I've been doing this job was flooding. Every year there was going to be a flood, or what we call in the emergency services the phenomenon of snow. Okay, the unpredictability of that. 1/2 inch, I think, in London is crisis mode. So, again, how resilient is your business from all of this? What about organised crime? Could you get a criminal gang lean on your company? Could you get insider threat? Andy mentioned this, about that sort of like insider, sort of like extortion and blackmail. What about pandemics? We've lived through 2 years of that. How did that wreck your business? What about severe weather? We get high gout here. It was only about 4 or 5 years ago that I was dealing with a crisis incident room for tornadoes in Birmingham. I mean, how bizarre is that? I never thought I'd be doing that. Health and Safety at Work Act. These things are not always the extreme and the sublime. How resilient is your business from a big legal lawsuit if I fall down a set of stairs and blame you? This stuff's going on all the time. Subterfuge. If I deliberately send an insider threat into your business, not to be overt about it, but to drag your business down, would you be able to winkle me out? If a competitor, even a competitor, we've had this in certain cases that I've dealt with internationally as well, where someone is employed direct by another company to get inside your company to sabotage it. So again, subterfuge. And this one, how many of you have dealt with protest or publicity at the moment? Someone who inadvertently turns up your door. I think I'd never see a world where I, as a Counter Terrorism security advisor, would go down and speak to a snooker, okay, about idiots jumping on tables and covering themselves in orange paint and stuff. So, again, no section of society is immune to any of this now. So why do you think I say I don't like plans? Why wouldn't I like a plan that says, step 1, step 2, step 3? It's never going to survive first contact. They're too rigid, okay? Too rigid. So you need a system that what I use, and I've actually coined it with the Home Office now, so they're starting to adopt it, is you need a system that is threat agnostic. You don't care what I throw at it, the system of how you deal with things is the system. Your business has got to be ready that come the day of the races, it can cope in crisis, okay? And that's going to be challenging. And if you are not well versed, you're going to struggle. And the trouble is that who judges you? You are what do you think the thing is? When you're stood inside a courtroom or a potential coroner's inquest, they judge you with one key word in mind that you'll never have the advantage of having: hindsight. Okay? Could have, should have, would have. Okay? And one thing that will never be available to you in that scene of chaos is time, ladies and gentlemen, time. If I was to say to you, I've been at a number of inquest inquiries and I've given testimonial and evidence, and I know some of my colleagues in this room have, where do you think they weigh most of their interest? Is it what you did on the day? Is it who died? You give me a flavour. What do you think is topical at the moment, even from Manchester Arena? Where do you think the focus of their findings has been, where they pushed most? So, prepare. How prepared were you? Because on the day, they know you're coping in chaos. They know it's going to be carnage. So they're less interested in that bit. The outcome's already known. As a matter of fact, someone has died. So all the interest is in is how ready were you? And you have heard from a grieving mother this morning and some leading experts in this field, the expectation from the public and from government and from legal precedents is you should be ready. There's very little at the moment. If you ever have the opportunity to scan, I think there is an open version of it within the internet. Look up the National Security Risk Register. It will talk to you about some of the things that government are concerned about from a threat perspective around terrorism, but I've talked to you about lots of others. So my clue to you is you need to be prepared, and that needs to be proportionate, and you need a system to manage that. Now, Andy Baker talked to you about what can we foresee as potential threats that we should be worried about. I think there was a gentleman sitting next to you, sir, who asked about, well, likelihood. You can't drop likelihood out of it, because how on earth can you plan at a proportionate level without likelihood? I can tell you now there are hundreds of ways that terrorists can attack the UK, hundreds. But methodology and precedents will dictate to you a lot. And also, if anyone's worth their salt who comes in to engage with your business, they'll walk around it with you and tell you from your location, your operating practices, these are what I see as your vulnerabilities. And what you'll have is vulnerabilities, versus your sort of like preparedness, versus your attractiveness as a target, versus what precedence is out there from terrorists attacking similar sites, and that will give you your likelihood in the areas that you should be concerned about. And one legal phrase you probably need to know quite well is reasonably foreseeable. Is it reasonably foreseeable that any other business that's akin to yours should have seen that coming? Because that's where they focus. So I spend a lot of my time in the training and engagement that I now do in your sector for the past couple of years around the difference between management and leadership. What's your thoughts on that? I'm a bit of a raging activist, so bear with me. I've got a loud voice anyway. I used to be a public audit commander. Right, what's the difference between management? Who in here is a manager? Who's a manager of some sort of process? Okay? Is anyone described themselves in their literature, in their official title as, I'm a leader? What are you a leader? Give us your title, sir, if you don't mind.
I'm the president of the Latin American Network of Associations, and I'm trying to make a flag which is for the world.
Oh, excellent.
The day of the fire prevention. So we all have a flag that will make a change in the world.
Excellent. An aspirational gentleman there. Excellent. What do you think about that? I've put up a definition up there, okay? In a crisis situation, where do you think most people want? What do they want? Do they want a manager or a leader?
We want a leader.
They want a leader. They want a leader. Now, most people I engage with, most businesses I engage with in your sector are managers. And managers manage day-to-day activity and processes. They might not be the same personnel or have the same qualities that you want to steer your business through a crisis. You've heard the gentleman here, I think it was yourself, Russ, that talked about the difference between role and title. I want the person who's the right qualities to lead my business through, not just because they've got a title. So I spend a lot of my time with colleagues talking about how you should develop skills of leadership, and specifically around the nuances of what do I need to do that's different if I'm in a crisis as opposed to managing my team day to day. I'll give you an example of this in emergency services because this happened only a few weeks ago. Crisis. People getting hurt, okay, on the ground, and they had a strategic leadership group. They come together, there's people struggling to cope on the ground, and for 40 minutes, they had introductions. Hi, Bob, how are you doing? Did you get here okay? Cup of coffee, Jeff? People were dying on the ground. So the difference between running a day-to-day board meeting and managing compared to crisis leadership is crucial. So what about, I've talked about the difference between management and leadership, and specifically I was asked today to talk about ethics. Now, you've got to have to go back to your business avenue and you've got to try and convince some CEO about the need to invest in this kind of sector, okay? What's your thoughts around ethics? If I was to say to you, there's all sorts of literature, all sorts of doctrine around sort of like psychology reports around ethics. But if I was to say to you, ethics can be basically summed up as these things, okay? It's a direct sort of like set of behaviours, attitudes and norms that we develop through life, either through nurture or nature. It's either we pick it up, it's already inbuilt in us, or it's nurtured into our system. But in today's modern business world, would you say that your company has an ethical style? What's your thoughts on that? You say, you're nodding there sagely, sir. What's your business's, without having to name the business, but in terms of its ethical stance, what does it pride itself on in terms of its ethical stance?
Well, we have an ethics policy, okay, and it's deliberate about what we do, but it's not just a piece of paper,
No.
right? It's about respect for all of our staff and all of our connections and all of our clients and even our competitors, actually, you know. And so ethics is about effectively conducting the business we do, which is to fight hard, but within framework where we are going to be rule respecters, if you like,
Okay.
within that framework. But we're going to be treating people fairly and treating people reasonably.
You've mentioned a word repeatedly there, which is fantastic, respect. You've mentioned about valuing everyone from top to bottom. I can't remember who it was earlier. Mentioned about even that front line reception security officer all the way to the chief executive, and understanding and respect about mutual understanding about what we all stand for. Why did your company, if you don't mind me asking, sir, think that was important? Why did they say we need to have a bit of paper that talks about this and something in our business that mentions it?
Well, it's in the DNA of people we take on, you know, and I think that it's how you recruit people, because you recruit people if the right people, if your ethics are aligned with their interests, and then you grow that policy through hiring the right people, but also how you project yourself to the rest of the world and the other clients is really important in terms of their wanting to do business with you.
This is interesting. Right, bear with me, I'm going to roam again. Right, if I was a shareholder, I have £2 million to invest in one of your businesses, okay? Why would I want to invest it in yours, sir? Okay, what's so special about your business ethically that would make me want to invest £2 million in you? What makes you different from all your competitors? Ethical stance. You value people. Do you value people? Yeah. Value people. Okay, so we're starting to see recruitment, customer base, what we stand for, it means something. They're not just a piece of paper, okay? And I would say, how do you balance, though, if you don't align yourself to the ethical views of your paymasters or to your end customer? I might want to sell you something, but I don't really believe in it. Do you think that's going to cause a problem in your business? Probably. So how do we equate all of this? Okay, and how does ethics affect business? What do we think of politicians? Do you think they're learning about ethics and how that affects their chances at the moment? No? No? I had to put him up there. I think, even domestically, our politicians are struggling. I don't think we'll see the SNP for a little while. Sorry for any colleagues from across the border today. But what you will see is our politicians are learning ethics counts. You can't behave one way and morally another way. It's not going to wash.
Science and added.
Book your tickets now for the 8th International Tall Building High-Rise Fire Safety Conference, taking place alongside FDIC in Indianapolis, US, on the 15th to the 17th of April 2024. 3 days of world-class speaker presentations, debates and networking. Book your tickets via the website www.tallbuildingfiresafety.com. Early bird discount tickets will be available. The Tall and High-Rise Building Fire Safety Management course is ideal for anyone who has responsibility for fire safety management in tall and high-rise buildings. It is a 5-day intensive course with world-class instructors. You can get full details of the course on our website www.tallbuildingfiresafety.com.
What about business then? How much do you think that cost them? Millions. Millions. Tarnished reputation, damaged business, personnel who don't want to work for them. You've heard this morning about inquiries and inquests and the power and gravity and the weight that they have behind them. From a legal perspective, probably the worst you're going to get as a corporation as it stands. Hopefully Martin's Law will be more powerful and have more teeth, but at the moment it's corporate manslaughter for negligence. What's the fine attached to that from a government perspective? The maximum fine. 2 million. 2 million. But you can triple, quadruple, 10 times more in civil litigation. 10 times more than that. So the impacts of these are massive. Who do you think carries the can? Is it the frontline security personnel? Who ends up losing their career, losing their job, unemployable ever again? Who do those inquests and inquiries hound? The controlling mind or leader of your organisation. I might get your frontline personnel to come up and say, did you know the policy? No. Did you know the plan? Never heard. I didn't even know we had one. Oh, right, okay. How did you cope on the day? It was awful. And I might give you a hard time. But who am I after? Who should have trained you? Who should have equipped you? Who should have paid you properly? Who should have made sure you knew those plans and procedures? So what they do in most inquest inquiries is get your staff up, beat them up to drag you in and sack you. Okay, and that's the end of your business from a civil litigation perspective. And worse comes to worse, if your leadership or management is that atrocious, you're potentially ending up on manslaughter charges, and that's criminal. So we've talked today about Martin's Law. My hope is that Martin's Law does have a bit more teeth, whatever it ends up being, because I think people need to be aware of the gravity of these things. Now, when I looked at your industry and business about 2 years ago, I thought, especially for this conference, high-rise and complex buildings. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, that it was actually one of this morning's commentators who actually said, it's like a city on stilts. I think it was Fegan, actually, that mentioned it's like a city. It's like a mini city with a community that lives in it. So let's have a look at it from a legal perspective, your trade, okay? Normally, high-rise buildings aren't going to be in Cornwall or Dorset, are they? They're going to be in big urban environments, big complex urban environments. You're going to have iconic designs. We've got the gherkin, the pickled onion, there's all sorts, isn't there? But really iconic, complex buildings. You've got multiple occupancy. You might have a building that you run security for, but it's got 101 different occupants, all with their own agendas, their own strategies, their own way of carrying on. You've got rental and residential, so permanent occupants, lot of sway, rental ones that come and go. You've got links to infrastructure. I've worked at a couple of iconic locations, and I'll plug you now whilst I may, Russ, because again, this is completely uncoordinated, unrehearsed, but it's a bottle of drink later. I've been in 2 locations recently in London that are both listed as critical sort of like structure sites, and they both had that box in them. Just pure coincidence. I saw it in the corner of their boardroom. But some of your buildings, some of your urban environments will have train stations, open areas, places like this next door to them. You'll have independent scrutiny and security that runs from different organisations. Most of the buildings I've been in at the moment are extremely highly technical in design. And you've got this weird phenomenon of you'll have your building that you run, but the public can come and go as they please in certain areas, which is really weird, which you don't own or operate, but they're just there anyway. So what does that mean? Okay, you're a lawyer's field mine, okay, because I could have a field day with you at an inquest because it's so complicated. So how do you steer through this minefield of ethics, how people perceive you, all your legal liabilities, multi-occupancy, iconic site, all of these things? How do you keep yourself on the right path? Have a quick read of that, please, as an audience. And I'm going to ask you, if I forced you in a crisis situation to be one of those, what would you be? What would you be? Have a little think. I'm going to force you to be one. Who here, hands please, go on, now your colours to the mast, who is the utilitarian? We've got a little contingent, we've got a handful of contingent there and one brave gentleman at the front. Who does the moral rights approach? None of you are moral, that's strange. What about the duty-driven approach? You'll do what duty expects you to do. Just out of sheer curiosity, do you have any military or service background? Who put their hand up there? Do you have a military or kind of emergency service background? So I expected nothing less. So whether there's people on fire, you're going to do your duty. The fair and just approach. We heard that's why you've got that piece of paper in your organisation. Who does the common good? I don't care what my boss is saying, I'll do the common good. Okay, 2 of you there. Who's virtuous? No matter what, no matter how many people die, if we all sink on the boat, okay, it's going to be the virtuous thing to do. Okay, what's your thoughts on that? What do you think most people want in a crisis, just out of sheer curiosity? All of it, bit of all. Do you think this ever comes out, or in inquests or inquiries? Think about Grenfell specifically.
Not in those words, but it comes out.
Ethics will come out. If you are naive enough to think that ethics will not play a part in a crisis in terms of scrutiny and how you've approached it, you are sorely mistaken. Because public outcry and opinion, even your own staff from a Health and Safety at Work Act perspective, that will play out. For my colleagues, and there's no wrong to it because I've been doing that for years, do you think there are problems with adopting just one in a crisis situation? Because you're going to have to justify why, okay? So for the emergency services, taking that all in mind, for a long while now, we've had to balance the rights of the public that we look after versus the health and safety of my staff, okay? So if I send a load of officers in to deal with a chemical, I need to make sure that they're safe, but I've got to save the general public. And unfortunately, in most inquest inquiries, we come out a bit like that. Okay? We are too risk averse. That's what the public think, and that's borne out a number of times. You heard a grieving mother say that there are things that could and should have been done. Why did we take so long to do what we did? Okay, only others can answer that. So I had a look at that from your perspective, and I thought, well, actually, you owe a right to the general public in your buildings, and it's coming in, whether you like it or not, through Martin's Law or already implied, because the Human Rights Act still applies to us. We might be out of Europe, but it still applies to us at the moment, and there'll be another form of it even if it goes. But you owe a duty of right to every person in your building. You also have a duty of care to your staff. Full stop. From a health and safety executive, sort of like, have any of you been at a health executive sort of like a process or trial or civil proceeding? You nod there. So if you don't mind talking about it, what kind of things cropped up? I don't want you to describe the case, but in terms of issues.
Safety culture within the organisation,
Or lack thereof.
They really have it's indefensible.
So thank you, sir. So again, what you've seen is You had a culture of misbehaviour. Forget what happened on the day. We know what happened on the day. That's happened. But what led up to it? But you have one thing on your seesaw I've never had. Money. So in the public sector, I've not had to worry about that. But I know what pressure are upon your leaders in a crisis to say we've still got to make pounds and pence, okay? Because otherwise our business ain't going to survive the end of it. What do you think you're seen as at the moment in most inquests or inquiries? Yeah. Is that a problem? Because we've said ethics is going to be a play. Do you think a business is going to go on? So like, take that situation where you've got a large industrial supplier that is using child labour overseas and it comes out. It's the end of their business. Don't even need a public inquest. Public are going to make up their own mind. So business is alert to this now. Okay, they're starting to understand this. And it will play everything that led to that event, your culture, the way you behave, how you sort of like organise and structure yourselves. And I'll leave that up there because this is what constantly crops up, okay? Read that quote, okay, and I've underlined a couple of key bits there. In any inquisitorial process, same for Martin's Law, the Manchester Arena report that come out as a result of it, they don't want to know the end result. The judges said there, we know what's happened, and everyone's come in here and told us about it. Well, what I want to understand is why. Why did it get to that point? You don't have systems in place. You don't train anyone. You don't invest. You've got a culture of corruptness that is just after money and nothing else. And all of that is publicly disclosable. And your organisation will never recover from it. Never in a month of Sundays. So the bit that you invest in what you do, and I know I'm preaching to the converted in this audience, but what your CEOs and shareholders need to understand is they run just as much risk from a business perspective of one ethical misstep than they do from a fine. Okay? The public will make its own call on your business. When it comes to decision making, one of the things that I and a couple of colleagues, when we engage with your industries, I don't train too many frontline responders, I train leaders. And what I try to train leaders in your organisations to do is to understand how to record decision and rationale. Because if I don't know about yourself, sir, how much you had to disclose or talk about in that health and safety inquiry, but I can tell you now, you've heard from the panel this morning, how many documents roughly get disclosed in a public level in inquiry? So take something like Granfeld. How many documents do you think get disclosed? 100,000 plus documents. It is forensic. And if a judge compels you to produce them, you've got no choice. You will produce them. Okay? If you turn up in court and say, oh, we accidentally lost them, that's not going to go down well, and the jury will make up its own mind.
The truth is, David, with some small exceptions, the answer is all of your documents.
That's it. They want them all. Everything. Yeah.
Even if they don't use them.
They hoover them up. Because, for exactly the point that Andy's mentioned there, if I get one that's missing, what am I going to allege? You give me 9,999, but you ain't produced one. And it might be an email from you to you. What am I going to allege? What's in that one? What's in that one? Why did you get rid of that one? Okay, so it don't even matter what's on it. Yes, please.
How many people do decision logs?
Hands up.
How many people what?
Record decisions.
It's not about recording, like I said, what you did, it's what we really did. When you're at court, because I'm a police, I was questioned what I did. No
that everything what I did well, not an issue.
Absolutely.
Every issue was brought up was what I didn't do, and they want to know my rationale why I didn't do something.
Actually, Richard, you don't have to do a lot. No, this is your records. Yeah, records.
Yep. Why did it include? If you, I know why you'll probably know. But in terms of why do they include, or why did I include the fact of omissions, things you didn't do? Because one of the greatest techniques, I actually was working with a professor who wrote a book on the art of making no decision. If I pontificate enough and delay enough and make enough excuses, I don't have to decide anything. And if I don't decide anything, no one can blame me. How does that not wash? The law requires both. So the worst place you can ever be is gross negligence manslaughter. And gross negligence manslaughter includes omissions, okay? Omissions, which would have come up in that inquest or inquiry. And so that's important. And exactly as the gentleman said there, in terms of your log keeping, I think you put your hand up there as well, sir. In terms of your log keeping, did you have any formal training around it? No.
I did come under criticism because it took me slightly longer to complete every job than everybody else, because I was completing my decision long as I was going along.
Okay, yep.
There was never any formal training. I just thought it was when they prosecuted the incident commander for the Atherstone on Stour job.
Yep.
And I thought every time the bells went down, up until that point, my thoughts were, where am I going? What have I got? Who have I got on the truck? How many trucks are going with me?
Yep.
From that day on, whenever the bells went down, my thought was, the next second I make the next decision, I could be prosecuted and put in prison for the rest of my life.
Yep. Yep. So, yep, absolutely right. So one incident I've dealt with recently, I can't go into it, but it's still prejudice, but I will be going to a coroner's inquest over it. One of the decisions I've been made, I've now put into a chronological log 36 pages long on one decision I made. It's only when you get to this level that people understand the gravity of what's going on. But if it helps at all, I'm used to dealing with chief executives and terrifying them. So it doesn't take me much to get into them, okay, on your behalf, and making sure they understand the reality of liability. And I've put that on the bottom there because for the most severe of cases, young woman who's lost her son as a result of a whole host of omissions that should have been in place. Why have I put it's for the jury to determine? Why is that important? It's public. It is our peers, our friends, our family, 12 good and true, that will decide. Okay, it's not your policies, it's not your company, it's not the health and safety executive, it's the general public. And they will look upon it and they will say, did you do the right thing? I've heard that phrase a couple of times today. Did you do the right thing? And one of the best examples I can give about what does that mean, Dave? Do the right thing, okay? And I really struggle to put this into words. My mum is a terrible cook, okay? She's not here, so I can say it. My mum is an awful cook, okay? And every Sunday she wants to cook me an awful Sunday dinner, absolutely awful. And I will try everything in my power to get out of that Sunday dinner, okay? I've been attacked by aliens, my dog's bit my leg, whatever I can think of. And do you know how my mum ends the conversation? Son, I'm sure you'll do the right thing. And every Sunday I go to dinner, okay? So, when it comes to training, I'm not here to say what I do. You've heard from lots of colleagues, and I don't want to be like that in this audience, is go out there and find someone who can engage with you that suits your business. Get someone who knows your industry, get someone who knows about what's current and what's going on, and design what's right for you, because every business is unique. There's no such thing as one size fits all. If I turn up and try and flog you a product that's set for a sort of like the Empire States Building and you run a bakery, it ain't going to work. So it has to be tailored to you. I always approach when I engage with industry modules because I know how precious your time is, particularly if you're talking about senior leadership. But I'm going to do a plug around training, not me per se, but training. Why do you think training is so relevant? Bearing in mind everything I've just said.
Practice makes the muscle memory.
Muscle memory, preparedness, systems, everything that's coming out from inquest inquiries, Martin's Law will all be about be ready. Be ready on the day of the races. And I can tell you now, the number one thing that's fallen out of Grenfell, without Manchester Arena, will not be the poor sods on the front line who tried to do their best. It'll be your systems were rubbish, your leadership was corrupt, that you didn't know what you were doing, you were ill fit for purpose. And some of it, as some of you have said, some of it is harsh. Don't get me wrong, some of it's harsh, because that's a hard job to do if you're in charge of some of them. But some of it is really justifiable. And we talked about proportionality, and so I'll end on that. A lot of you will be saying, well, my chief executive ain't going to want to spend 80 grand because Martin's Law's coming in, okay? Some of it is so basic, ladies and gents. It ain't about expensive gadgets or gizmos. Information. You've heard from AOFI. Telling people what they need to do. The great British public ain't idiots. Most people just want to be told. So know how to react. And when I say about leadership, it's not just your strategic leaders. People on the ground who are inspirational, know what they want to do. If you're in a terrified, cowering situation, you look to someone to lead. You don't care who it is. If they put on one of the tabards from the crisis leadership box and they seem to know what they're doing and they're calm and collected, you'll follow them. You'll follow them. And it's real basic stuff. Honestly, it's knowing where to go, locking a door, knowing where the keys are, knowing to call the police. There's some real basic stuff. And most inquiries I've ever been to where life has tragically been lost, that life would have been won or lost in that first hour, period. And so you've got to be ready to spring. So thank you, one, for inviting me. Thank you for your time. And I'll be around for a little while if you want to ask me any questions. But thank you very much.
Science and added.
Book your tickets now for the 8th International Tall Building High-Rise Fire Safety Conference, taking place alongside FDIC in Indianapolis, US, on the 15th to the 17th of April 2024. 3 days of world-class speaker presentations, debates and networking. Book your tickets via the website www.tallbuildingfiresafety.com. Early bird discount tickets will be available. The Tall and High-Rise Building Fire Safety Management course is ideal for anyone who has responsibility for fire safety management in tall and high-rise buildings. It is a 5-day intensive course with world-class instructors. You can get full details of the course on our website www.tallbuildingfiresafety.com.